Thanks, Colleen. And just to clarify, I'm actually the youth president of the National Farmers Union. Um, so hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. And I just wanted to begin by giving you a bit of the context in Canada, because it is a challenging context within which to work with the Declaration on the Rights of Peasants. The Canadian government did not adopt the Declaration, and the current political economic context is export oriented. The financialization of farmland is intensifying, and at the same time, reconciliation with Indigenous peoples is a priority for social movements, but it's yet to be reflected fully in government actions. And the fact that the government does not recognize collective rights is a major hurdle for both peasants' rights and Indigenous rights in the country. So I'd like to talk about the context of the legal potential for the broader implementation of the Declaration on the Rights of Peasants, because I think this is one pathway that countries where the Declaration was not adopted, this is a pathway that those countries can take in order to generate more discussion and more legal precedent around the Declaration. So I'd like to give you an example of a case that took place in 2020. So in the summer of 2020, this was just after the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, lawyers from the Canadian Lawyers for International Human Rights used Article 23 of the Declaration on the Rights of Peasants in a provincial court in defense of a group of migrant workers facing dangerous living conditions given the pandemic context. And so to back up a little bit, Canada employs nearly 500,000 agricultural workers through a federal program, and this program has been riddled with accusations of human rights violations over the years that it's been operational, with poor living conditions, low wages, and no pathways to permanent residency for the workers. At the same time, Canada is dependent on these migrant farm workers to ensure the food supply is stable, yet it has not allowed for living wages, universal services, or justice for all migrant farm workers. So in March 2020, just after the states of emergency were announced across the country, the federal government mandated a 14-day isolation period for all temporary foreign workers entering Canada and ensuring individual workers subjected to self-isolation in groups would always have 2 meters of space around them, limiting the numbers of workers who could live together in a lodging. So when this came out, a major industrial farm in the province of Ontario, which is in central Canada, submitted two inadequate self-isolation plans to their local health authority before requesting a hearing regarding the public health order and the rules that public health had put in place in their region, limiting the number of farm workers living in one lodging. So during the hearing, the farm argued that the requirement in the self-isolation plan limiting 3 farm workers per lodging was arbitrary, and that this failed to recognize the significance of migrant farm workers to Canada's food supply. And they argued that they had not been able to bring in as many migrant farm workers as they would ordinarily require, which jeopardized their harvest and production. But in defense, and I'm going to read a short quote, the Superior Court of Justice of Ontario argued that decreasing health inequities as required under the guideline requires that the number of workers that are allowed to isolate together is such that the risk posed to their health is comparable to that of the rest of the population when they are quarantined. Allowing larger numbers to isolate together exposes migrant farm workers to a level of risk not tolerated for others in the community, thereby increasing vulnerability of an already vulnerable group. And in reaching this outcome, the court actually cited the UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants. And this was the first time that this happened in Canada since the declaration was globally adopted. And the way that they cited it is important. So I'm going to just read another short quote for you. When they cited their decision, they said, "Furthermore, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and Other People Working in Rural Areas is part of the body of human rights law and norms to which Canadian adjudicators may look in interpreting statutory or common law obligations and in reviewing administrative decisions." Following this quote, then they actually cited Article 23.1, which states that everyone has the right to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. So the context and the outcome of this case is demonstrative of the applicability of the Declaration in the Canadian context, but it really has to extend out of the courtroom now and into the policies that govern these migrant farm worker programs. This is a precedent-setting case, and for that reason, promoting this case is really important. And I think it's strategic to expand our networks of human rights lawyers to give them insights into the Declaration, to give them examples of how it's already been used in case law, because the more that articles and the Declaration itself are referenced in case law, the more we have the capacity to create a foundation for rights-based agriculture policy. And in countries like Canada that didn't adopt the Declaration, I think this is a powerful avenue that we can take in order to secure its implementation in various ways. So I will leave it at that. Thank you.